Morning, everybody. Hope everyone had a good weekend. It is November 10th, 8:10 a.m. Welcome to my channel. Crazy Friday. Crazy Friday. Internals really told the story on Friday, and my weekly expected move indicator as well. Before that market opened, I was talking about a lot of stocks as passive expected move for the week. QQQ already did. Prior day, pre-market, we were below the expected move um, on the SPY. And I've noticed once those expected moves in a lot of major stocks get breached, you usually get a snapback. And like I said, I'm noticing this data, taking notice of this data when that happens. It happens both ways, to the upside and to the downside. It's just when those options market expected moves are so stretched, there's like a snapback. And you also had the SPY, the QQQ hit the 50-day moving average, pushed off it. SPY pushed through it pretty far, and then eventually closed actually above the expected move and actually closed higher than the previous day. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Now, on a Friday, when you close with a hammer, usually you get higher prices. And that's what we're getting this morning with the aid of a possible government shutdown, stopping the government shutdown. Now, a little bit on the government shutdown. That could be a catalyst for short-term pricing. Doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. But could it give a little juice? Yeah. Just like when the government shutdown happened, the market pushed down from that initial news, and then it didn't care. Went to all-time highs. This doesn't affect long term. It just doesn't. Short term, you could have a boost, you could have a drop, but overall, it really doesn't matter. So we are gapping up pretty big. Gapping up pretty big. It's going to take a lot of wind out of this selling out. Okay. Now, over the weekend, you're hearing stuff about 50-year mortgages, a lot of controversy over that, where you're going to be spending a lot more in interest just to have a cheaper payment. There's controversy on that. There's talked about Trump talking about a $2,000 dividend from the tariffs. So, hey, what's up, Cole? I mean, of course, yeah. We recovered pretty mightily on Friday, and we're gapping up today. Honestly, I don't think this can. We'll get into it, but I don't think we have much juice left here. Yeah, I don't think we have much, like I just said. We'll get into why. But this is what's going on, right? In our markets, the weekends give us some news, right? Possible government shutdown, boost, give a little more boost to the market, and pretty much just got sold off into the 50-day moving average, right? And I talked about this on Friday in Discord. Internals never got that weak. And something else happened on Friday that you have to notice under the hood. And we'll get into all that. All right? We'll get into all of that. Now, let's get going here. Welcome to my channel. My name's Steven Gonzalez. I use market profile and volume profile to find structure in the market, so along supply and demand, gamma exposure levels, the most traded price of the year, the month, the week, and the previous day. That is my edge. Also use Anchor DUops. My market internals lets me know what's going on under the hood of the markets. Bookmap helps me execute futures, which I had a decent week of trading in futures last week. And my weekly expected move. indicator, which is proven to be pretty handy. And that's free on my Discord. So, all right. Now, hopefully, you join me every morning. Subscribe, set that alert, give you the market story, latest news, and what's going on with the markets. Not hyperbole. Not, oh my God, we're falling. Not, oh my God, we're bullish. It's not how I do it. I go on probabilities. Okay? That's why I was steering in my channel on Friday. Listen, these internals are not that weak. We're below the expected move. And I always talk in like snapshots. Snapshots, right? I talked about the 249 level in the NASDAQ. Acceptance below that's bearish, right? If we can't find acceptance below that, that is not bearish. Just like that area I talked about in the ES with those 3 high volume nodes. I said you usually just don't rip through those areas. And we couldn't sustain below it. And the next thing you know, we're rocketing back. Okay. Causing short covering. All right. A lot of probably algorithms, you hit that 50-day moving average. Some buy programs get hit. And we couldn't close below that 50-day moving average. Right? And then you get that hammer candle on a Friday. Generally, you get higher prices. And that's what we're getting right now. Okay? Now, if you want more in-depth coverage, you're going to join my Discord. That's Confluence Trading. Go to YouTube homepage, click on the link, and sign up. What are you waiting for? Now, if you want to see what I was talking about, let's just go over some of the things that I was saying. Had a lot to say. What was that? 3 days ago, right? I was talking about the 249s, right? Internals not weak. And I was just talking about the big levels, right? And it wasn't an overall market that was weak. I was talking about this equal weight line that was not even weak. See how the market's kind of dipping down here? And this equal weight barely got under zero for the rest of the day. And I was talking about these key levels. I said, hey, this is the key area here. You need to see support. This was the 249s. Now we're in demand. And I said, this, if at the current moment, I was like, this is looking bearish. Talked about the 50-day moving average, and I talked about the expected move. At this point, you see we're below the 50-day. We were below the expected move. I said, let's see if we can close above. And then later on, I said, there we are. We're back over the expected move to the downside. Okay, so with the internals here and just how the markets work, I wasn't sold on we were going to go much lower. Okay? And I wasn't overreacting. You just use levels and say, hey, the market's got to show me and prove to me that it actually can break those levels, and it couldn't do it. Right? It couldn't do it. So, we're back and we're gapping up. Crazy market as usual. Crazy market as usual. All right, now let's get into futures watch list here, and let's see what's moving markets. So we got Ethereum. Ethereum is up 4%. Silver is up 3.77. So metal's getting some love today. Gold up 2.48. Bitcoin's up 2.40. Now Bitcoin tried to break a major level below and the 200-day moving average. It is now pushed back up. NASDAQ up 1.42. Russell's up 1.27. ES up 0.90. 10-year yield is moving up. That's not going to help mortgages. Interest rates, that should rise again. Crude's up 0.40. The Dow's up 0.35. The dollar was above 100. Now back at 99, down 0.11. 30-year bonds being sold. The VIX is down 3.20%. We are back under a 20 VIX at 18.47. Okay. Volume today was higher, but we're at 100%, close to 100% relative volume, so that's decent. It's decent. Remember, it is Monday. It is Monday. Okay. Now, moving on to let's see our Mag 7 Plus here. Coinbase was really went below expected move last week and actually closed right above it. And I was looking at a play in Coinbase or MicroStrategies with Bitcoin. I didn't like the chart on Coinbase, even though it's obviously up 3.12%. Right? AMD's up 3%, Nvidia's up almost 3%, Broadcom, so semi's getting a lot of love today. Not a shocker. They were the most beat down. Okay? Up 2.31, Broadcom, Google's up 2.29, Tesla's up 2.21, Amazon up 1.40, Meta's up 1.28. There's really not a lagger except Berkshire Hathaway, which had a nice week last week. Okay, top sectors, let's look at those. There's the mining, NEM, ticker NEM, up 3.61. Palantir, that got smoked, it's up 3.14. Oracle as well, finally filled that gap, up 2.63. GEB Vernova up 1.89. Qualcomm's up 1.70. Caterpillar up 1.13. Uber's up 1%. The laggard, United Healthcare. This just can't get out of its own way. United Healthcare down almost 2%. Right now, I don't know why that is, but we'll get into it. Now, let's look at the granular list here. I don't remember the ticker there. I don't know if they got bought out or something. I don't know if that's Skechers or Skyworks. I can't remember that ticker. Anyway, we might see that later. That looks like something like it got bought out or something. But anyway, Iris Energy up 5.39. CoreWeave up 5.2. This is all the typical AI like plays that were like got crushed. All right, CoreWeave, Celsius up 5.27. All right, Vertiv, data center building out. Supermicro computers, Micron, Western Digital, Gold, Junior Miners, Oklo reports earnings this week. D-Wave, all these types of stocks, right? They're up today. Not a surprise. Who's down today? Oscar Health. Now, something must have happened with Health because Oscar's down 8.58. United Healthcare is down 2%. Humana's down 1.21. So there's something going on there. We'll get into it. Maybe we'll see what it is. Okay. There's not a lot down. Okay. And we'll move on. Two sectors. All right, no shocker here. Semis leading the pack, up 2.52%, followed by technology, up 1.73, discretionary up 0.88. Basic materials is up. That's your metals. Okay, materials. Communications up 0.58, industrials up 0.50, financials up 0.30, energy. Only laggard is healthcare. Like I said, I don't know why that is yet. In staples, right? Now, that's our sectors. We're going to move over to the economic calendar now. Let's see here. Today, looks like we have ADP employment change weekly. Oh, no, that's not today. That's tomorrow. So there's nothing today. There's nothing today. All right. This week's Fed speak and government shutdown. We would have CPI. We would have PPI. But right now we don't. Let's look at that juice. Now, Fed Daily speaks at 8:30. Fed Muslim speaks at 9:25. Trump is a bilateral meeting with Syrian president. Hold on a second, everybody. All right. So, I was saying, 11 a.m. Trump bilateral meeting with Syrian president. At 3 o'clock, Trump swearing in Indian ambassador. Okay. There's not much besides what I talked about in news. Okay. There is some um, stock news. So Pfizer stock rose 0.6 after U.S. pharma giant client $10 billion deal for obesity drug developer Metsera. Nvidia stock gained 3% after semiconductor giant CEO Jensen Huang said over the weekend that the company is experiencing very strong demand for the Blackwell chips. Tesla stock rose 2.2, helped by overall optimism even after its sales in China dropped. Taiwan Semiconductor stock gained 2.2 after the world's largest contract chip maker reported strong growth in its revenue in October. And Rumble stock soared 17% after the video online platform said it will acquire German data center firm Northern Data. CoreWeave stock gained 4.4 with earnings from the artificial intelligence data center firm later Monday, likely to keep investors focused on technology that helped drive markets higher over the past few years. That's that. Let's look at some more. Pfizer wins. Oh, we talked about that. U.S. flights delays, cancellations accelerate as air traffic controller shortages surge. Tesla Cybertruck chief Siddhant Awasthi departs after 8 years. All right, let's move on here. Let's move on to. Let's look if there's any decent upgrades today. See why stocks are moving today. Let's see. It's 11:10. Eli Lilly upgrade. Oh boy, I almost added. I have this at my list to add. This is rare earths, ticker MP. They got an upgrade. I was so close to buying this at 50 something bucks. It's already up to 61. Still, if I get to pullback, I might add to it. Sunrun, that's got an upgrade. Downgrades. Is there downgrades today? I don't see any, but this list is sometimes not the best. Okay. All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. Two dailies. Two dailies. Actually, switch net. Two internals. Let's do internal recap real quick. All right, so you can see here, even though we are pushing down, notice how the equal weight really never got weak, right? And this, for this much volatility, was not that weak. And all you needed was this to start to recover and follow equal weight, and then boom, that just started to rip, right? Started to rip. Everything was green. And that's kind of all she wrote. Now, this ADDs for S&P 500 were never weak all day. Never weak. Okay? And we'll get into that a little more of why that is and what I see on the weekend after I do my weekend analysis. Okay? It's very clear what's happening in the markets. Okay? Here's our SPY. Now you can see we hit this trend line and closed right above it. And you can see here, that's the expected move. That's my script that I run, and it was like all the way down here around 661 and ripped all the way back to close within the expected move. So I don't know what you're waiting for. Why wouldn't you put that on? That's free right now in my Discord. That is pretty awesome. Okay, that's why I wasn't ecstatic about shorting this market that day. Just why I wasn't ecstatic about it. Okay, hit the 50-day and closed above it. Closed back into this congestion. Back into this congestion. Where are we now? 677, let's say 40. 677, 40. Look at that. We were all the way down here. We are all the way right here. That's crazy. We're above Thursday's highs, let alone Friday. That is pretty nuts. Let's look at that on futures. That's a serious hammer candle. Now look, you're back over the 20-day. I mean, we were under the 50-day. We're back over the 20-day and at the 9 EMA daily. Pretty crazy move. Okay? Pretty crazy move. Just when you think, oh my God, I'm getting out. You see what I mean? This market, very hard to short the market in general. All right? There's your cues. Hit the 50-day. Still has this trend line. Still intact. Barely touched the 50-day. And then ripped up. Didn't close within the expected move, but close to it. Okay? Close to it. Where are we at now? 619.17. 619.17. That is right here. So it's the ES spot is stronger on this rally than the Qs because it was relatively weaker, right? Like it's not over this day's highs, the Thursdays, but I mean still pretty crazy move. Okay, back over to 20-day. So it's kind of crazy. It really is kind of crazy. Let's look at futures. Okay, let's look at futures. You can see big hammer over the 20-day. Right in the middle of last week's range. We're already in the middle of last week's range. It's crazy. I'll show you what I'm talking about that in a little bit. Okay. Now, here's the stuff I want to talk about. Okay. Last week I kept showing you guys the breadth, the market that was not good. Okay. You have to understand the overall market was weakening as we were making all-time highs. I kept saying this. Tech is such a big part of our market that it can push our markets higher regardless of the overall market is weak, which it was. Okay? So you have to think about it. Our market's biggest mover, our biggest market cap is the technology sector. 36% of our market cap was weak, which was going to bring down our market. Now the whole time it was rising, the rest of the market was going lower. Right? But what happened on Friday, towards the end of the week, was the overall breadth was improving, but our market cap heavy stocks were still down Friday early. But now they're all working together, which is pretty crazy. Okay? Now I'll show you in a little granular view here. Let me bring it up to sectors. And just to show you the sectors that were getting weak. Okay, this is real estate. This was down at key levels. It was not looking good, and then whoop, it improved. Right? It hit its limit and improved. Look at staples. Look at that level. Look at that support level, staples, right? Went all the way down, was getting destroyed, and started to push back up. Basic materials with the miners and stuff like that got hit. Look, came down to a key level, was selling off. This was the breadth. This is when our markets were like still pushing up. Like this was just not looking great. And now it's starting to recover. Okay. And then you had some other ones like industrials were doing nothing. Look at that. Look at this chart. I want to show you industrials. I mean, nothing to see there. Financials the same. Just middling. See? Wasn't really doing much. And of course, if you just look at technology, it just got a bloodbath, right? Semis look just like tech because they're pretty much, right? So that was what was happening under the hood. There was a rotation happening on Friday. Like the rotation was happening. People were putting their money in other sectors. But at the end of the day, money started to rush in to everything. Right? Now, if we look at the RSP, right? Remember I kept saying this last week. This is the equal weight, right? Oh, let me go back to this. Okay, this is the equal weight. Let's go to the equal weight. Remember, this is if our market was not this was just falling, but then it started to get relative strength, right? So that's the equal weight, right? Now, let's look at our breadth. The stocks, the number of stocks over the 50-day moving average, and that's improved. Look at it was down. Here it was down to 34%. On the end of Friday, it went up to 43% of stocks over their 50-day simple moving average. It's probably going to be more today. So the overall breadth of a market is starting to improve, along with technology starting to catch some buyers, possibly for the end of the year. Okay? Possibly for the end of the year. All right? I just wanted to show you that because if you're not looking at how the sectors that make up our markets and then the, the deteriorating breadth while the market was going higher, but now we're all on the same page pretty much, which just makes our market stronger, right? If tech starts getting bought and the rest of the market breadth improves, you're going to have a nice Santa Claus. Now, something can come out to contort that. Obviously, nobody knows what news can come out. All right? Just wanted to share that with you to really know what's going on. Not just, oh my God, we were crashing and oh wow, now we're bullish, right? You want to know the reason. Well, I just gave it to you. Okay? Let's look at hourly charts now. All right, let's look at our hourlies. And I'm going to show you some interesting things. I think that will shed some light. Okay? And I'm not called Confluence Trading for nothing. All right? So I'm always going to show you Confluence. Okay? Now, notice this. There's a couple things here. Okay? Anchored VWAP. From the all-time high, I have this turquoise line. Guess where the market is now? Right at that anchored VWAP from all-time highs. Okay? What does that mean? This represents sellers. The average seller has been getting paid, and now they're getting challenged. All right, that's not all. That's a trend line that literally, right there, you get a touch, and guess where the market is? Right at that downtrend. Now, an extra layer. Guess what? I put a Fibonacci from all-time highs to the lows. Guess where that market is? There's the 50% fib right here. Market's here. Here's the 61.8. The market is right here. We retraced more than 50% of this down move already. Why I'm saying I don't think there's a lot more in the gas here. Anchor view up from the all-time highs, this trend line in the fibs. And you have this trading volume that's here. That's why I'm saying it's Monday. I think we trade in a range today. Good morning, Chief. I think we trade in a range today, right? Because if you're just a trend line person, you're going to go, ooh, this is at a downtrend line. If you're just an anchor VWAP person, you're going to be like, oh, it's at the all-time anchor VWAP, right? If you're a Fibonacci person, you're going to say, oh, we just retraced 50% of this move. Now, this structure is not great. Notice this structure down was not great, and guess what happened? Zoop, you cleaned it right up. And again, I don't know what's going to happen. I have no clue. This could break this, and then what? If we're down here, that's not great structure. You could take that out. But I don't know, right? Right now, all I know, this is a big recovery. Okay? Hopefully it makes sense what I'm telling you. If you're a trend line, Fibonacci, or anchor VWAP person, it's all lining up and all making sense. All right, we zoom in a little bit here. This is your ES, obviously. Okay? So we're in between the 50% Fibonacci and the 61.8. We're in middle of this congestion here. Okay? Anchor view up for the month, we're above it. We're above the week to date, which just started Sunday night. Okay, so now these anchor view ups are separated. Okay. Your big level is your 67, what is that? 75s? About right here. That's the most traded price of the month. We're back over it. Remember, I talked about this in my Discord. This was the levels the market was going to have a problem with. And notice it broke it, but couldn't find acceptance below it. And right? So for now, we just recovered. That's why I'm saying this is a big recovery. 50% of that from that move, crazy. Okay? This is going to take a break today. Unless there's something else out there that we're not aware of. Okay, let's look at the Qs. Qs, remember, it's relatively weaker. It was relatively weaker. So let's look at the confluences in the Qs. Same stuff, right? Anchor view up from the all-time highs has not been touched. That's why it's relatively weaker, right? It's right here. Okay? We have a trend line. We're right at that trend line. And guess what with your Qs? Here's your 50% Fibonacci level. Look at that. You can't make that up. Look at that. That's literally the resistance. That 25554s, the 50% Fibonacci, literally right there. Now, the biggest difference is this in structure. In the ES, remember, if you look to the left, there was a lot of congestion, a lot of trading. This is not great structure here. So the NASDAQ can easily push back up into here. Okay? Remember, when you have a downturn in the weakest sectors and you have a relief rally, the weakest sectors are going to get the biggest push up. Okay? So I think we're at 50% Fibonacci. That's what I'm saying here. You can't look at this and go, oh my God, today we're just going to go to the moon. Look at the move we just made. We took back half of this move in the end of Friday and this morning and overnight. You think this is just going to do this today? It's highly unlikely. Okay? Highly unlikely. We'll have to see, though. You trade, we got to see, right? Not what I want to see, what I'm seeing. All right, that's your hourlies. That's your hourlies. Okay? Now, we're going to move on. Let's get into the market profile, volume profile. And then we'll get everybody out of here. Let's look at our ES here. This is our market profile, volume profile analysis. All right, so looking at this, remember I don't analyze this until I'm with you guys. All right, so this is like the weekly composite volume profile. This right now doesn't give me much edge here. It's just like a big profile, many distributions. Okay, many distributions. So we're gonna get into the big gap. All right, big gap. Big gaps are never easy to trade. Okay, they're just not. Now our gap fill, which is quite shocking, is going to be 67.62. That happens to be where we closed at the highs. Very bullish close here. Okay, so we're going to mark this off. Also happens to be around the most traded price of the 24-hour session, which is 67.53. So that's a pretty good level here to look at for the gap fill. Now we had the most traded price of the month, 67.73. Lines up perfectly with this demand zone and the overnight lows. Okay. Now we are currently in supply. I don't like long in supply at all. Okay. So when we're gapping up like this, you got to draw certain levels, right? So I look at the 50% Fibonacci, the overnight, that is 67.98, and it happens to line up with this demand zone. The overnight most traded price around 6,800 and this demand zone. Okay, and you have another good level here. You can see some volume here. The 68, 66, 80. Let me see that. 66.21 to 23s. That is now a confluence high. That's your overnight highs, and it looks like Thursday's highs. So that's going to become important as well. Like I said, we have a lot of overhead supply. I just showed you we retraced from the all-time highs more than 50% already. More than 50% retracement already in between the 61.8 and the 50% retracement. That's a long way to retrace. Okay? And that's a lot of shorts. So, this is what we got. This is what we're dealing with, folks. The midpoint of Friday was 67.09, and I mean, that's crazy. That is crazy. All right? This is what I'm looking at. You know, and you have big gaps like this. Equities become a little easier to deal with because they have their own stories. And this just is a lot to digest for the markets. Okay, it's just a lot to digest. I mean, if you were short and you're like, all right, I'm holding on to my short here, I don't think, boy, boy, this is crazy, right? All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into some scenario here. You can see how we're moving. We're moving nicely. Consolidate, move up. Consolidate, move up. Consolidate, right? That's how the markets move, right? So we're not just going straight up in this overnight. We did more or less do that here. But so there's decent structure on the move up in the overnight session. Okay. I'm going to say it again. There's a lot of overhead supply here. In supply, like there's very good demand supply zones up here. I don't think this market's just going to rip up. Could it happen? It could. I'm not going to be long right here. That's not a high probability trade. Okay, that's not a high probability trade. Now, I don't know if I put the scenario thing up. But I'm going to do it again. All right, and we'll get right into it. We'll get right into it. Now, I understand we're gapping up pretty big. Okay, we're in supply. So I'm going to act accordingly, right, to what a trade setup would be. So let's go to the bull side. What can I expect? Well, a couple things. I can expect to break these overnight highs. Come right up to that level that I said, the 68, 23s, 21s. Then I feel profit taking should happen. And let's say we go back and test around the 6802, 6800s, which is the overnight VPOC and demand zone right here. And the 50% retracement of the overnights. You can get a little battle here, and if you get a nice pullback, that could be a nice long. And I could say, possibly try to test this up to the 6840s, a prior, I believe, weekly low right here. Okay, that's number one. Number two, if the market retraces, right, comes through this overnight VPOC, now you're going to meet up with that month-to-date anchored VWAP here. And this is all long area. Okay, so we can push back all the way down to this month-to-date anchor VWAP, right, into this big demand zone. Anywhere in here is still buyable. Okay, you could right up to this most traded price of the month. A lot of confluence here. Lot of confluence. Okay, most traded price of the rolling month. Overnight lows. Okay, and you can bounce, retest. You can get a nice move. Now, of course, I'd like to be down here very quickly to get that long. I will change my mind if the market starts to push down and it's weak. Then I might be like, all right, I'm gonna wait to see what really do with this big level. Okay, gap fills all the way down here. Now, because this level's so important here, usually a gap fill, I'd be like, ooh, I'd like that as a buy. I'm not saying it can't happen. The bear trap would be if we open up down here, we break through this 6773s, which is pretty bearish. But if it's quick and you gap fill, go to the close, and this does this pullback, that's a long. But this market for me to get long there can't be very weak. It just can't. It's got to be quick. Otherwise, I want to do nothing to do with if we go below 6773. I want to have nothing to do with a long. Okay? That's your longs. Let's go to the shorts. Now, what did I talk about before? The ES is above the 50% Fibonacci from the all-time highs. It's already retraced 50% in between 50 and 61.8. Usually when you take the 61.8 out, that, my folks, is probably a sign we might go 100% retracement back to all-time highs. It's a very high probability, but we're in between. Okay, we just came a long way. If you're a runner, you just came a long way, you're going to take a break. So, what could we expect here? A push up, break the overnight highs, right? This confluence high is the 68.21s to 23s. I feel like this could be a little bull trap. You go into supply. There's a naked VPOC here as well. You get some selling, right? You get a lower high. This is where you could cook a little bit. Get a nice short right to about the 68.02s, the overnight VPOC. If you take the overnight VPOC out, that's the most traded price of the overnight. You should push down. Okay? And I feel like your next target will be that 6773s, the most traded price of the month. Now, if this market internally is like, okay, everything's weak, tech's weak, semi's weak, this gets broken. You want to see acceptance here. And that's about a half hour at least or more. Price holds under that. That will be bearish. You'll fill the gap. And the next thing is the 24-hour most traded price of 67.53. You start taking this out. This is very poor structure here. That could be bad. Okay? That could be bad. Honestly, this is probably the only thing I'm interested in. Now, don't get me wrong. If the market's really deteriorating and you want to wait for it to break the 6673s, that might be a short here, but I'm not too crazy about that. I'd rather get something up in here. All right, that's the ES. Let's move on to the NASDAQ. Okay, let's move on to that NASDAQ. Remember, NASDAQ is right at the 50% Fibonacci from the all-time highs. Right at the 50% Fibonacci. So let's mark off some levels here with your NASDAQ. We're gapping up, so we got the gap fill right here. Gap fill to, what is that, 25206. Gap fill. Okay. Closed at the highs, very bullish. Okay. Similar to the ES. Similar. A little different though, right? Remember I said it's at the 50% Fibonacci. It has more room, in my opinion, the NASDAQ to go up than the ES does. ES is in supply already. This is not. You have single prints here from the past that this can really push up still. So I feel a long in the NASDAQ is probably going to be easier. It's probably going to be easier. Okay? So here's our other levels. We have our most traded price of the 24-hour rolling month, 25320. That's a high volume node here. That's why I have the box here. So this is a very important level. You have demand here. You have the most traded price of the rolling month in the 24 hours, the 253s. Market defends that. Very bullish. It's bullish. Okay. You also have this demand here. Bottom of it's like the 50% Fibonacci of the overnights. Now check this out. Your most traded price of the overnight is up at the highs here. That even looks better for the NASDAQ. Okay. Now, most traded price of the rolling week is 25645s right here. So you have a prior weekly low. Okay. You have a prior RTH high here in supply. So this is important here. Okay. That's really the playground. That is really the playground. Okay. Let's get into scenarios and get you guys out of here. Okay. This just looks like it wants to go higher. Okay. So we're going to start off with the bull side because, like I said, I believe the NASDAQ has room to go. Have single prints here, you have weak structure here, and then you have supply. It has the room. I'd be very shocked if we don't go up here. Okay. So, couple things that I would like to have. Now, in the perfect world, I would want the NASDAQ to pull back into this demand and then get a higher low, and then you can really break the overnight highs and target that 25645s into supply. Okay. Now, that might not happen. What could happen is you push up, tap the supply zone, pull back to that overnight VPOC. The overnight VPOC is 25541s. So you can go into the 25541s and that could launch as well. And this is a pretty decent supply zone here. That's what I'm saying. I don't expect too much higher from that. Probability wise, you came a long way. That's heavy supply. That should be resistant. Okay. Now, of course, if we do drop more into this area, also a buy point at 253s, you hold it. That's a long. That's a better long. Under the 253s is where you have some problems. Okay. I'm not interested in a long below that. Shorts. Ooh. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. It's totally not what I wanted to do. All right, let's put this level up here again. Okay. So on the short side, okay, I want this to push up, gap and go. Boom. Right into this big level. Most traded price of the rolling week, supply zone. I want to see how it will react here. If it does this, go back under, retest it, that's a short. You target that 25541, that overnight VPOC. If you break that, you're going to roll a little, at least to this 25419s, at least. But I think you probably really make a nice move into this demand zone. And that honestly would be my target, 253s. Unless the internals are like ridiculously weak, Okay? It's probably where you bounce. That's probably where you bounce. All right. I'm back here. Sorry about that. Got a bunch of alarms going off, so. All right. Now that my alarms are off, I don't want to keep having you guys hear my alarms. All right. So that's what I'm looking at here. I really believe that there'll be resistance here. Okay. Really, that's the move. Anything in here. Because there's a lot of froth from down there. People who got long here, long in the overnight, trust me, they're going to want to take some profits. That's a big move. Okay? Honestly, I'm trying to look at this here. In any reality, let's say we do this, right? We push down, you get the move here. Just like in the ES, this is the most traded price of the 24 hours, the rolling week. Okay? It's a big high volume. You can see the volume here. If we break that and you find acceptance, 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 and you retest it and the market's weakening, oof, this could get pretty ugly. You can go down to 249s. Like I said, I don't know if this is in the cards. It's Monday. We don't know what news will come out. But if this gets ripped through and you start holding, this market could be very volatile, right? And I don't know, maybe the government shutdown's again not fully done. I don't know, right? But I know this has poor structure. Okay. And it's Monday. Mondays tend to be like a malaise. Now, if we opened up here or something, or here, I'd be like, all right, we're not like, we didn't go crazy, but there's a lot of froth here. Say, okay, so that's it. That's all my analysis for today. It's Monday. All right, so if you enjoyed that, please smash the like button for me. That would mean a lot, help my channel out. All right. And as always, please join me every morning. Subscribe, set that alert, give you the market story, the market news, the economic calendar, and just what's going on in the markets. I like to give you a look under the hood and tell you what the overall breadth looks like, why this is looking like this. There's always a reason. There's always a reason. Okay? I hope that's what I share with you, and that's everybody who listens or watches or whatever can appreciate that. Okay? I'm not trying to sell you I'm a fortune teller here. It's just watching markets for a while and understanding when we're overstretched and what realities are, what's probabilities. Okay? Generally, when you retrace this much, you don't now we go up another 50% today. That's usually not how it works. Okay? So, now, if you want more in depth, you're going to join my Discord. That's Confluence Trading. Go to the YouTube homepage, click on the link, sign up. What are you waiting for? Let me be your indicator. Use me as your indicator. I will not steer you wrong. Trust me. And I use certain levels as decision points. Okay? If this does this, then this is bearish. If this doesn't do that, then this is bullish. Instead of me just going, I think we do this now. Like, I don't let the price action, like 4 or 5 minutes, let me think, oh, okay, we're selling off now, we're crashing. It just doesn't work like that. You need levels to base your like analysis off of. Otherwise, you're just, what are you doing? Right? That's why you got to flow like water with these markets. Right? I'm sure Friday early on, people are like, oh my God, we're crashing, right? I'm sure people felt it. All I told everybody was we're past the expected move. We hit the 50-day moving average. Let's see what we do. And let's see what we do with the 249. And let's see what we do with the, I think, 67, 6670s. And guess what? We held them, right? And now what? We're back up 50%. Crazy. Crazy. Okay? Now, everybody, hopefully you have a good day. All right? Maybe. No trade's a trade. Okay? No trade is a trade. I'm not expecting much today. I am not. Okay? So, everybody have a great day. And if I don't see you in my Discord,